So the other day, it's just like any day, I wake up in the morning and then after about 30 minutes getting ready, whatever, I sit down and I meditate for about 10, 15 minutes. So on this day, it was like every single other day. I sit down, I meditate to try to figure out what I'm thinking about. And it hits me that I'm thinking of two things that are like the strongest things on my mind at the moment.
Okay.
One is a song that I heard the day before, and the other was a random Discord comment. Neither one of them were interesting at all.
What was the
Nothing
song?
special about the song. It was a Eminem song, but it wasn't even a good one. And then the Discord comment was just I don't want to say which one that one was, but it wasn't that interesting. It wasn't on our Discord. It's a different. But
Right. Ours are all interesting. So
yeah, all of them are super interesting. Like, but there was nothing even remotely captivating about either one of those. And that's what I was thinking about since I had woken up that morning. Which is weird because in the last few weeks before this, I had learned about a bunch of cool stuff. And I had been reading about all this cool stuff. And I don't know, learning about a lot of interesting things. And I wasn't thinking about any of them. And I think that's interesting.
okay, I get where you're going with this.
So why is it? Well, I think there's two different parts to this. But why is it that we will choose, or our brains will choose to think about things that are not interesting at all when we have tons of stuff that would be better to think about? So I guess that's my question.
Um, have you ever read about the Reddit algorithm?
No.
It may have changed somewhat since, but I think the fundamentals are the same. Most people maybe don't remember this or have thought about it much, but as far as I know, Reddit was really the first content aggregator that did what it does, which is you see things not based on uh, newness, and you don't see the top things of all time. You see this sort of weird hybrid where stuff is at the top for a little while and it's heavily upvoted and everyone likes it, and you click through and all the comments you see are the most upvoted comments. It's not sequential in terms of time. It's this weird filtering of everything being pushed to the top. It's the most interesting, most provocative, most mind-blowing thing. And the way the algorithm works, it's very simple. There's a bunch of little subtleties, but the basic idea is this. Every post, whether it could be a post of a picture or an article or content, whatever, and then also same applies for comments and everything. It gets a score based on how many people like it, and then it's multiplied by time, essentially. So anything that's newer, if it's an hour newer, then the score is multiplied by a bigger number.
So the upvotes count more if it's newer?
Essentially, yes. If you have two
Okay.
posts and this one gets 100 upvotes, and then you have a post that comes an hour later and that one gets 100 upvotes, that one is rated higher because it's 100 times 2 or 100 times 3. And the next one that comes up is 100 times 4. I don't remember the exact numbers, but that's the basic gist of it. That there is this time multiplier that is always increasing as time goes forward. And it makes anything be more visible. It puts it at the top. It's like it doesn't, that how much you like it matters, but time is this major multiplying factor. I think that's what you mean, right?
Yeah.
Like our brains use the Reddit algorithm.
Yeah, it seems to be that my brain is choosing new things or fresh things, regardless of interest level or even meaningful level. It's just, oh, this is a new thing. I'm going to think about it. The the way I've been picturing this is like I used to go fishing a lot. And at the end of the fishing day, whatever, you're sitting on the dock and you toss your bait, into the off the dock and you feed the little minnows. that are swimming around. And you toss, let's say, a shrimp or something, and they all just swarm it and attack it or school around it and just devour this thing. Or they nibble at it for a while, but it starts to sink. And then once it gets to like a certain point, they kind of just stop messing with it. They just get bored with it, and then they'll go for the next one on the surface, and they just attack that until that sinks to the bottom. And then they just do that over and over again. And when the bait stops coming, they'll just swim around aimlessly, even though they have all of this unfinished food on the floor of the ocean. They don't even consider it anymore. They're just always looking for that next new thing. And I think that's what's happening with my brain. It's like I was learning about all this cool stuff like just days before this, and then all of a sudden it just hit the ocean floor and I stopped thinking about it, and I attack whatever is on the surface, no matter what it is. If it's just a song or a random comment, like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just the fact that it's on the surface, that it's new.
So what's the problem?
The problem, well, is two things. One is that true? Like, do we really just attack things because they're new? But I think the biggest problem, or the most, I don't know, the most effective thing is that I let really big concepts or really important things just fall down, and then I never touch them again. Or something happens that my brain just kind of encodes it as that I've learned it. Like, I was taking these art lessons a couple days before this occurred to me, and I'm learning about these really cool concepts, and I think about them for maybe 24 hours, and then they just slip my mind because, I have to go to work, I gotta do, I don't know, random house stuff, whatever, and I just stop thinking about them. And I know that unless I go out of my way to kind of bring them back up from the ocean floor, like, there's no way that I'm going to revisit them. They're just gone. Like, they're not in my field of view anymore. They're just kind of out. And there's the other side of it where I consider those things, like, once they're out of view, I almost think that they're learned. Like, it tricks my brain into thinking that I did learn all of those things. I don't know if, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And we'll get into it more.
It's, okay, maybe a simpler way of putting it is, you'll read half a news article, and you know that you didn't finish it. You ran out of time, or you just got lazy and went to the next thing. But you only read half of it, and you know that there's more. But a couple days later, when someone brings up that topic, you argue your point like you know what you're talking about. And in your mind, you know all the facts, even though you didn't finish reading the article.
That's too big a conversation to have today.
Well,
that might be the problem with humanity on the whole.
Okay, well, that's what's happening with a lot of stuff for me, I think.
So I have an explanation. This is my own theory, but I think it's compelling, to me at least. I have a dog. And if you don't have a dog, I highly recommend getting one.
A dog or a doc?
A dog.
A dog, okay.
Don't get a dock unless... Like, I'm not on a body of water. Having a dock wouldn't make a lot of sense. It would be a deck. A long, skinny deck. So, having a dog... You're really trying to disrupt my train of thought here. Having a dog reveals a lot about behavior. And I've said this before, but dogs are so external. You can see so much about what they're doing and feeling and everything because they're just so visible with that. My dog will search for food all the time. Always. If there is a possibility that food could be found, he is looking for it. If you take him to a park, the first thing he does is run the perimeter and look for any discarded food. That's all he can think about. That's all he cannot help but search for food. If you take him to a friend's house, he runs around looking for food. He runs to every single person there to see if they'll give him food. Like, that's all he can do is just look for food. If there's any vague possibility that he will find it.
Yeah,
And it's
when I came over there, he went through my backpack and ate everything that I brought,
which
or almost everything.
I did warn you about.
Yeah, well. Anyway,
Well,
continue.
okay. He doesn't need to do that. I mean, most of the time what he finds is disgusting. It's like more dirt than food, but he'll eat it, right? But he has this compulsion. He just has to do it. But we feed him plenty, and we get him weirdly expensive dog treats and everything that are made of food that's better than what I usually eat. Like, he gets tons of food, all he needs, and he gets nice treats, everything. He doesn't need to do that, but he does, and he can't help it. And it's actually a problem if there are certain parks where food has been found so frequently for him that he can't play with other dogs. He can't just be a dog. He's so obsessed with it that it completely ruins the park trip, and we just can't go there anymore because all he'll do is sit there and like run laps trying to find food and completely ignore everything else. And I think that is a behavior of animals and people and just about any living thing. We are wired to search for food, and I mean literally food. I went to the zoo recently, and they have this really cool room that's full of bugs, like just stick bugs and all kinds of things. And you go look at them, and they're all just walking around searching for food. That's what everything does. We're born in an environment where food is scarce, and you have to search for it. And in many cases, it's like what you spend almost all your time doing. Most animals, they spend all their energy and all their time just trying to find food. The thing with food is that when you find it, you eat it, and you're good to go. And then you go search for more food. So we have this loop in our heads of searching for stuff. And when it comes to food, it works great. Because you search and you search and you search and you find it and you eat it. And then you go to the next thing and search and find it and eat it. And then the next thing. Like, we're just built for that. But there's some stuff, like in modern life, that requires more than just eating it and being done with it. And I think that's where we run into problems. Where we have this deep, fundamental, going back to ancient history, desire, motivation to search and to find stuff. And once you've found it, it's time to search for the next thing. Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It's like I come on these big concepts that are super interesting. I'm like, finally, I found the answer. All I have to do is think about this for a while and practice it, and I'll be good. And then the next day comes, and I'm like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's go learn some new stuff, some different stuff.
Right.
Like, I already found the answer. All I got to do is like practice it and work on it. But
yeah, because you're wired for food. You ate it, you're done. It's time to find the next thing.
Yeah, or you just eat a couple bites of it, you get full, and then you just go search for more food.
Yeah. The place where I see it the worst is any form of time management system or anything like that. There's so many times, and this has happened many times before, and it will happen many times again. I get really, let's say I'm not as productive as I would like. I'm not real happy with my day to day, and I start thinking, man, this system seems great. I'm gonna use Remember the Milk, which is like a time management system thing, or I'm gonna use Getting Things Done, or I read this book about doing something, and I've gotten all kinds of elaborate with this, of making point systems, and I'm going to wake up at this time, and then I'm going to go do this thing for 30 minutes, and then if I do this thing, I get a point, and like, I've come up with all kinds of ridiculous schemes for time management and how productive I'm going to be, and it's completely enthralling at first, and sure enough, a month later, I forgot that I ever even did that, and I get sucked into all these different systems, and the novelty of it is completely captivating at first, and then I'm just... once the novelty wears off, I found this new thing that got me excited, but now I'm done and I'm ready for the next thing.
The only way I can think about it is the stupid bait fish. But
that's fine.
If you only eat like a little bit of the bait when it's tossed into the water and then you let it sink to the surface, right? if that's all you ever do, you constantly bring in new information, which I did this. I spent years studying art, and I don't know, I keep thinking that I understand and I know all of these concepts, but then I started taking art lessons with this guy that's way better than me, and he's like, no, you need to practice this. I'm like, no, I already know about that. I already understand that. You don't get it. I already learned that. And he's like, no, you should practice it. And then he starts showing me how to use it, and I'm like, oh, I totally missed that. I don't know. I considered it finished, but I didn't do it. I bit off a little bit of the bait, and then I let it fall to the floor, and I never returned to it. I kept going for more novel things. Like I wanted to learn the next concept and the next one. And it felt to me like I was covering more ground, but actually I was just taking off little bites of a bunch of different stuff. And I think people that do things regularly get a lot better at them than people that work really hard for a little bit and then go to the next thing.
To me, it almost... So, first off, I definitely agree.
Because, just to finish the metaphor, it's like they keep bringing that same piece of food back up to the surface until eventually it's gone. Like, if they do it every week, they're bringing it... Okay, let's just pretend the bait isn't going bad. But
it's kind of gross.
They just keep bringing it back up until it's all gone, and then they fully understand this concept or this thing, or they get all the benefit from that one piece of thing, knowledge, concept.
Yeah, it almost feels like we aren't really built for depth. Again, think about a dog, right? Dogs don't study things and every day try to evolve their knowledge of, like, they just do dog stuff and find food and eat it.
A dock would also work for this metaphor because it's not built for depth. Sorry. Go ahead.
I don't know how to recover from that. All right, let's switch topics because I can't follow that with anything. What do we do about this? Okay. Clearly, there's a problem around novelty. We seek novelty. I think we all kind of intuitively understand that that's just a thing that we do. In my mind, I really do think that it's this searching for food thing that's built into us, where we look for new stuff. We're built to search. I love that. What do you do about it?
I think you embrace it because that's who we are. That's how we operate. So you should embrace it. Now, I'm going to bring up for like the 5th time this classical challenge that I've talked about in like every single episode since I started.
I talk about StarCraft every week pretty much, so, and I probably will today. So yeah, you're more than fine.
You also talk about dogs pretty often, but
I think serious dogs are like so revealing of the human condition.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so I'm doing this classical challenge, which is you have to draw a picture based on a classical song. You listen to the song, you draw a picture, that's it. They're supposed to be quick sketches. You don't spend that long on them, whatever.
Right.
And me and my friend decided to do this every day for the month of February. So a new drawing every single day. And at the beginning, I would sit down to draw. And mind you, I spend every single day at work creating pictures. Like I'm given a prompt, I do the research, whatever, and I make the picture every single time without fail. And I'm good at it. But for some reason, I listened to the song on the first day, and I got nothing. Like, I just have nothing. Like, how is it that I've spent almost 10 years studying art and all this stuff, and I sit down to draw a picture based on a song, and I just have nothing? I can't recall anything. So I scribble some random crap down, and it looks awful, and I hate it. And I'm like, okay, there's something very wrong with me. The second day, the exact same thing happens. I try a little harder and I fail even harder. And it goes like that for almost the whole week. Like I am suffering. It is so bad because we also decided we were not going to use any reference. This had to be totally from your mind, from your imagination. not allowed to do any research. And I'm just failing miserably. And I realize that it's this problem. Well, it's a related problem. I have all this information that has sunk to the ocean floor, and I do not have access to it. I don't have readily quick access to it. So when I sit down to draw, I got nothing. So what I decided to do, what I was calling it then was filling the well. It's like my well is totally empty because I have nothing new. There is no novel thing sitting around waiting for me to use it. I have this empty well. So before I would start drawing or listening to the song or have anything to do with the challenge, I would spend about 20 minutes looking through art books and really thinking hard about the different, I don't want to sound lame, but like the imaginary worlds that I've used before, and like just things that I would want to draw. And I really just think about this whole world of stuff that I like to draw. And I look at art and I just take it all in. And it's all novel to me. It's all new and exciting because I'm just sitting there looking at it. And then I listen to the song, and it's like all of a sudden the well is filled, and that the bait is brought to the surface. Like I can see everything on the surface, and everything is there in front of me, ready to be used. It's like the thing we were talking about where I think it was Chopin listens to Mozart or plays Mozart before he composes a piece. It's like you study the masters or you study the thing that you're about to do, and then you go do it while all of those things are fresh in your mind and new and exciting to you. And that totally changed everything for me. It went from being this horrible, awful, terrible experience to being this really fun, amazing thing. Not that the drawings were like, incredible. They're still just quick sketches, but like the experience was totally different. Now I have all of this stuff to draw from, and I don't know. I filled the well with novel information, and I'm able to pull from it now. So I really tried to embrace that idea of that imagination needs to be novel and exciting. It needs to be filled with things that are new to you. Does that make sense?
I think so. What is it you're filling it with? Like, what are you doing right before you go to draw?
Pictures, imagery, just thoughts of like all the different things that I would want to draw. And
you're kind of finding things that are inspiring to you, artists you like consuming all of that and then going into
now
this.
I'm not, taking pictures and then just recreating them. I'm looking at all these pictures, and they remind me of what I like about composition and what I like in a picture, period. I don't know, just like if you were to listen to Beethoven for 20 minutes and then go write a song, the chances of you recreating Beethoven are going to be 0% because you're not Beethoven. But you can be very inspired by him and write something that's still probably not going to sound anything like Beethoven, but it'll have some kind of a flavor of Beethoven in it. And so I would go look at, drawings or paintings of artists that I really admire, and then some of their influence comes into whatever I end up drawing.
So what you're saying is use that affection for novelty to your advantage by finding a bunch of stuff, letting yourself get excited about it in the way that you do about new stuff that you think is cool, and then sort of channel that into this thing that you're trying to do.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And there's another, at work, we have, a whole bunch of different projects that we have to work on. And you have, say I'm currently at the moment, I'm doing a painting for a specific project, but I'm also halfway done with a painting for a different project that got put on hold like a week ago, right? And eventually they're going to move me back to that previous project and make me finish that painting. But the problem is that when I go back to it, I have to totally start over. I have to redo all of the research. I have to review everything and try really hard to get back into the mindset I was in. And I've talked to other artists about this, and they feel the same way. They always say switching projects takes a whole day to really get back into it. And I think it's because of this reason, that you need things to be new again. Like you have to try to find a way to make it all exciting again. And it's hard. Like it's really, really hard.
All right, here's the problem I have right now. There's several very interesting lines of thought that I've kind of got from what you're talking about here. Where to start? Okay. I said I would talk about StarCraft, so I will. Okay. Here's something that I've noticed, and I think that this is a major misconception, or I don't know, misunderstanding that's really common with other StarCraft players or anybody doing something like competitive. And anyway, here it is. Pretty often when you're trying to get better, a lot of the advice you'll hear is, okay, focus on this one thing. You know, when you play a game, you make sure that you never float money. And in the context of StarCraft, it's very bad to accrue money, because if you spend it, then those things you spend it on are valuable to you. But if it's just sitting there in the bank, it doesn't do anything. It's like one of these very fundamental concepts of the game, in that you need to spend your money on stuff so that those things bring you value inside the game. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. But
it makes sense.
Well, okay. Just if you've played StarCraft, if you haven't played StarCraft, or anyone listening, whatever. It's just this thing that you tend to like. A common piece of advice is play games and make sure this is your main focus. Never let yourself, get more than 1,000 resources or something like that. And so you queue up and you start playing, and it's this novel idea. It's this thing that's on the front of your mind. Like, okay, I'm going to make sure I never float more than 1,000 resources. And so you're like doing all this stuff, spending whatever. And I think this is where people get a little bit wrong. You can do that. You can play games where you accomplish this goal, this thing that's at the forefront of your mind, this novel concept that you're really interested and excited about. And the reason you're able to do it is because you're thinking about it. Like you're just like, that's what's on your mind as you're playing these games. You're neglecting other stuff. You're focusing on this thing. And the problem is that obviously the novelty of that idea wears off, or you start, you kind of go through that cycle of, oh man, I'm doing really good. I'm spending all my money. That's great. But the reason you're spending it all is because that's all you're thinking about when you play. And then someone else will say, focus on, always like distracting your opponent while you attack, have your army in two groups. And then you start like, that becomes the thing that you're always thinking about. And the money starts to float up again, because this is the new novel thing that you're fixated on. And then you go to a third thing of, make sure that you always get your upgrades at this time, whatever. Like there's this new novel thing that starts occupying your mind. And I think the way that you need to think about it is that when you get into the novelty mode, where you have this concept that is very interesting to you and you're excited about it and you're thinking about it all the time, you have to recognize during that arc of the obsession, that little sort of honeymoon phase with this idea, the final resting place of that concept is unconscious habit. It will eventually be a thing that you never think about. And it has to become completely intuitive and instinctual, to where it just becomes this thing that you always do without thinking about it. Or here it is put a little bit differently. At the start, you're going to think about something all the time. It'll be on your mind. But you have to plan for the fact that you aren't going to be thinking about that in a week. It has to integrate itself into the thing that you're doing. Like in this case, a competitive game. It has to somehow be a habit that you don't think about at all. Or in kind of a bigger context of, like, say, your life, it has to somehow become a habit that just happens, where you don't think about it anymore. If you're going to get up at the same time every day, that's kind of a thing that we did last month. At first, it's very exciting. It's like, oh man, there's a lot of promise here. If I get up at this time, then I can do this thing that I'm really interested in the morning. And everyone's kind of obsessed with that, purposely. But you have to plan for next month when you're obsessed with something else and you're not thinking about that anymore. It somehow has to just be integrated in your life, where it's just the thing that happens. and you aren't dedicating your brain power to it.
See, okay, I love that. And I think that what everyone seems to think all the time is that they need to find the perfect routine or the perfect thing that's going to make everything great forever, right? But the problem is that we need that novelty.
Yeah.
And so it's not about finding the perfect thing. It's about continuing to find novel things. Continuing to make things novel. Oh, I really wish I could say this right, because it makes sense in my mind. It's not about finding the one thing that works. It's about continuing to find a bunch of things that work for a little bit, and then you go for the next thing that works for a little bit.
We might
because there is no perfect thing. It only works perfectly when it's novel. When it's new, it works perfectly. As soon as it's not new and you don't care about it anymore, it kind of stops working. And it's not your fault. It's just that's how brains work. So you have the secret is to continue searching and know that nothing lasts forever.
The way I have been, here's my current thinking on this. The novelty phase, when you're really excited about something, I think that there should be a little piece of your brain, kind of almost like your conscience, that's saying, this is not going to be novel forever. You're excited about this right now, but you won't be in the future. Maybe a week from now, maybe a month from now, doesn't matter. So what do you want to do with this? Let's say you get interested in a new diet. You read about keto and you're like, oh man, keto is amazing. Look at all these stories of people totally transforming their health, whatever. Or veganism, or, oh, it's a little different, but whatever diet you want, right? So you go through this phase of, I'm going to start eating this way and I'm going to transform myself. And I think part of you needs to be thinking about what you're going to do when you're not that excited about it anymore. And what I've started doing for a bunch of stuff is I've started, well, okay, slightly different, but I've started putting it into my spaced repetition system. I put a bunch of stupid stuff in there. I got really interested in the idea of intermittent fasting. I've done this sort of off and on for a long time, but got sort of re-interested in it recently. And I started thinking, man, I really want to tighten this up. I really want to have this very solid eating window and then fasted window. And there seems to be some research that suggests that that's probably good for you. And so I got all excited about that. And then I thought, I've gotten excited about this like 7 times before. What's going to be different now? You know, why on earth would I stick to this strict eating schedule when I never have before? It only lasts for a little while during the novelty phase. So what I did was I in my spaced repetition system, I wrote a bunch of cards, or a few, where I have to memorize certain facts. One of the facts I have is, or the question is, what time do I brush my teeth? And the answer is 8:30. And I also set up a reminder to remind me to brush my teeth at 8:30. And the idea is that once I brush my teeth, I don't eat anymore. So I'd like have this weird memory flashcard of, hey, Mike, what time do you brush your teeth? And it's 8:30, which is silly. But at the same time, it's kind of, it helps avert the novelty thing, because after that cycle of interest has faded, I still get this reminder of, hey, time to brush your teeth. And I still have this card that comes up whenever I review my flashcards of, hey, what time do you brush your teeth? I'm like, 8:30. I just like force myself to remember that. And I've started writing lists for all kinds of stuff about, hey, when you meditate, what do you do? Like, oh yeah, well, I do this and this and this, and that's how I like to do it. What time do you do this thing? It's like I've taken all this novel stuff and tried to
see the 2 lists on my wall.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to point. Yeah, one's a morning routine, and the other one is an evening routine, but not a routine. It's things I can do in the evening. And because we talked about the morning routine and it was all novel and new, but then I stopped thinking about it and we go to the next thing.
Exactly.
And it just becomes, it sinks to the bottom and I'm not thinking about it anymore. So I wrote it down. And now every single morning, if I'm just wandering around like, what am I doing? I'm so tired. Like all I have to do, look at the list. And I'm like, okay, that's what I do next. And then I just do it. It's not novel and new to me anymore, but it's extremely useful. So
it feels insane during that phase where you're thinking, oh man, this is so exciting. I'm going to journal every day at this time. Like it feels insane to write it down because it's what you're thinking about. Like it's on your mind. So why on earth would you need to make a list and post it to your wall? But inevitably you get to a point where you're obsessed with something else. And if you think about future you and how future you is going to be obsessed with a different thing and not thinking about this thing you're thinking about now at all, you can it's like Memento. You leave notes for yourself and tell that person, hey, this is what you're doing today.
Was that a movie? Memento?
Yeah, you haven't seen Memento?
I think I have.
But you forgot it?
That's
I amazing. It down. Well, so it's a movie about this guy whose memory only lasts for a few minutes.
Does he have like bleached, highlighted hair or something?
I don't know.
I think that's what.
I don't remember it very well either. The movie is about how he can't remember anything past a few minutes, so he has to he leaves himself clues every day or little things on the wall.
I think I just remembered that he looked a little bit like Vanilla Ice or something. Maybe I'm thinking of a different
movie.
I don't know. But yeah. You have to prepare for it to be totally not novel and interesting in the future. And what is it that you want to stick around?
I think that's what I'm trying to say is that I think you should use the novelty phase to think about, okay, where is this going to land? Is this going to be a habit that I do every day? Is this a new behavior? And when you're thinking about behaviors, we've talked about this in the past, but you got to think about cues and responses and, what's going to cue this behavior to happen? And how do I make sure that gets installed correctly? It's like you're putting new pieces into yourself of every time this thing happens, when I see this, I'm going to do that. And you have to set that up to where eventually it becomes completely unconscious, where it's just a thing that happens and does not require you thinking about it. But I feel like you were saying something a little bit different than what I was saying about keeping things novel.
Yeah, okay. So with routines and all, you need to find ways to do things even though they're not novel and new.
Right.
But there's other things, for me, the little classical challenge, like drawing a picture. I can't kid myself that all 10 years of information that I've learned is going to be readily available to me. I haven't reviewed it all. There's just stuff that I'm not going to be able to remember. So it then becomes, well, what can I remember? What is readily available to me? And it's the stuff that I've seen recently or thought about recently or that is novel and new to me or totally subconscious habit that I don't even think about. But when you're creating a picture, you need to recall a lot of visual information, and that visual information doesn't last long. So the stuff that you're going to use to make a picture, if you're drawing from memory and not using any reference pictures, is going to be stuff that you've seen semi-recently or mixed with the knowledge that you have ingrained in your brain. So you need to find ways to embrace that and make certain things novel that are related to whatever you're about to draw. And the same would go for writing a piece of music. If you're going to write, I don't know, a sad piece of music, then it would probably do you well to go research some sad pieces of music that you really like, right? And then take note of what you like about them and what makes them so good. And then when you go to write your sad piece of music, you know that your well is full with relevant information. So you're taking advantage of that novelty because
Okay.
it's a very good thing.
Right.
If you, yeah.
So here's where I think that here's the different things that we're talking about. So I'm kind of thinking about how you get obsessed with an idea and whatever, like I said, diet, habit, whatever. You get obsessed with a new thing. And I think you should think very hard about, like, during that obsession phase, how you make sure that that thing that you're obsessed with affects you in a permanent way. Again, I think spaced repetition is amazing when it comes to information. It lets you put information into this storage system where it's you guarantee that it will be memorized and remembered. So that, like, I can't possibly recommend that enough for informational things. In terms of habits, you have to think about the habit and count on the fact that you aren't going to be obsessed with it in the future. I think what you're talking about is a little bit different in the sense that it's more about, if you're working on art, you're doing these concept pieces or inspiration pieces, whatever you want to call it, where you listen to something and then you're trying to create something that you haven't really done before. So you're trying to push yourself in a little bit of a new direction, right?
Yeah. Go on.
So I think what you're saying is that you should use the novelty thing in your brain, almost like use it strategically, almost like a drug, where you amp yourself up on this thing for a very specific purpose, for a very specific time, which is, I'm going to do this piece of art and I want to do something I haven't really done before. So I'm going to consume a bunch of stuff that I know is exciting and I know is going to get me thinking about it. And then I'll go do this thing. And it kind of pushes yourself in a new direction.
Yeah. Yes. But I also think that does not just apply to art. It could apply to you playing StarCraft. Like, if you are going to... There's this thing called priming in psychology. Have you heard of priming?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm not going to explain it well because I don't even think I understand it well, but it sounds relevant, so why not? I think that, like, the top example for this was that you would recognize the word nurse faster if someone said doctor before it. Whereas if they had said bread and then nurse, you wouldn't recognize the word as quickly. Or something like that. So what I'm trying to do is prime my brain to make it ready and fully submerged in this environment where I'm then able to carry out a task. For you and StarCraft, you don't want to, I don't know, turn off the TV, run to the computer, and expect to do your best StarCraft game ever, right? You have to get into it. You have to review the information. Everything has to become fresh and new again. You have to take the food from the ocean floor and put it onto the surface. Like, you have to re-indulge yourself into this world. And that's what I'm trying...
For example, maybe I could watch a game from a pro player that I thought was really amazing. I could do that and go, oh man, this is awesome, and then go play. And that's on my mind, and that's what I'm thinking about.
Well, kind of, but you said it sarcastically, so
I
still
didn't.
don't think you get it.
So I love sarcasm so much, and I use it all the time. And sometimes it's hard to say things where they don't sound sarcastic. And it sounds like I'm being sarcastic right now, but I'm not, I swear. We need like a safe word for when I really am not being
hopeless.
sarcastic.
You're stuck at your default is sarcasm.
I know, I've been told this by many people.
I can't kid myself that I will be able to go from 0 to 60 in drawing. I can't just sit down and do the best drawing ever. I have to give myself time to, I don't know, to kick up the dust and to get back into that environment and make certain things novel again and new again, I guess is what I'm saying. So now I've incorporated that, what I call filling the well, into my process. Like, that is now a staple in my process. Whenever I go to do a picture, I know that I need that. And I can't really do it without it. I mean, there's different slower ways to get around it, but this is the fastest way I have found to really kick myself into gear, I guess.
Basically, you're saying get hyped before you do the thing.
Not even hyped. Just like, see, sarcasm again. Just like review stuff. It doesn't have to be hype. I'm not always hyped. I'm just saying I review stuff. It becomes new again and fresh in my mind, and then I begin. There's no hype involved. I never said hype
listen. I wasn't being sarcastic at all. I swear.
I bet you still haven't done the dream board either, right?
I haven't
done that.
No, I haven't. Okay, look, I've been a little bit of a mess for the past few weeks. I had some kind of weird health stuff going on. I think I'm fine. Maybe. We'll talk about that later. Okay.
I think you're fine.
Hopefully. I might go blind. I might not. We'll see. But okay. We can kind of save this full conversation for later because I actually think it's really fascinating. But I want to try to explain why I'm not being sarcastic about the get hyped thing. One of the really strange things that happens in me playing StarCraft is that sometimes I will go on win streaks where it feels like I can't lose. And sometimes I will go on losing streaks where it feels like I can't win. And what will happen, I see this, I mean, this happens to myself and I see it in other people too, where let's say I start playing and at first I'm a little slow and just kind of trying to get moving, but I'm playing and I win. I'm like, sweet, I won. And then I play another game and maybe it's really hard and it like I'm super focused. Maybe it's a really long game. It goes half an hour or something. And then I win again. And I'm like, whoa, I won it. All right, sweet. And then I queue up against somebody who's really good. Maybe one of the top 50 players in the region. I'm like, oh my God, this person is so good. And I'm playing and I'm focused and then I win. And I'm like, oh my God, I won. And so what happens is the adrenaline starts to build. I mean, literally adrenaline. And what happens is I win and that adrenaline becomes euphoria. And we talked about this in the two-factor theory of emotion, how the chemicals in your body can be the same, but your psychological interpretation of it determines the emotion you feel. So I'm becoming euphoric. And I mean, it's like I'll get up and like pump my fist and just be so thrilled. It's insane. It's like this feeling. The awareness starts to get really high and I feel so good about it and I feel so focused and I feel so confident and all this amazing stuff happens and I just play incredible. And sometimes I go on these streaks where I'm just killing everyone. No one can beat me. It's incredible. Other times, that same thing happens. Start playing, play a game. I'm a little slow at first. I start to pick up and I'm focused and I'm struggling and I'm like, okay, this and that, and then I lose. Like, okay, I lost. It's fine. You know, it's not all about winning and losing. And, you know, sometimes you lose and whatever. And I play another game and I'm going and I'm focused. Maybe it's really hard. Maybe it's half an hour and then I lose again. And I can feel the adrenaline going up, but I'm not interpreting it as this amazing feeling anymore. I'm angry and I'm agitated and I'm just like, oh man, I can't, like, that's so dumb. I can never beat this person or this strategy, whatever. And I go again and then I'm angry and it just gets worse and worse. And it turns into, it's the same like base experience of this heightened awareness, this adrenaline in my body, but it goes in a completely different direction where I'm just mad and angry and hate everything. And then I get done and I'm just like mad the rest of the day. Complete opposite. Here's my point with that kind of weird tangential thing. As I know this, I know that this happens. I see it all the time. I can be thinking about what I just said, where I play a game and I lose, and I'm like, I know it's happening.
This is exactly the same thing I go through with drawing.
I think
sometimes
everyone
the same
goes through
drawing.
this. Yeah.
The first half of it, I hate everything. Like, it sucks, and I hate it. And then all of a sudden, like, I do one thing right, and I'm like, oh, actually,
right.
You know, I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And, you know, then I feel great.
Right.
Yeah.
You like update your entire perception of yourself as
Yeah,
a human
exactly.
being and everything immediately. My point here was to, one, explain to you that I'm not being sarcastic when I say you should get hyped. I understand this concept. I've witnessed it in myself and many others many, many times. I can play, I can lose and go, I know it's not like the same thing's happening. I know that I'm just interpreting this as a loss and I'm getting angry. I don't need to. It could have just as easily been a win. I could go on a win streak. It doesn't matter that I know that. It still happens. The point is, your primitive mind is so powerful that you can't just master it. Not, in my opinion, you can't. You can't just go, I'm above that. I understand that winning and losing can be arbitrary, and maybe it was just a random flip of a coin, and I'm going to go on a win streak instead of a losing streak. Like, as many times as I've tried to make that happen, I can't. You have to respect the fact that your base instincts are there. So with the novelty thing, like what you're talking about, getting excited about something, like you said, or whatever words you want to use, priming yourself for writing a sad piece of music and listening to a bunch of artists that you think are amazing who write these incredible sad pieces of music and getting yourself feeling that, like the actual subjective feeling you have determines winning or losing, doing really well or doing really poorly. And I don't think there's any way to completely escape that. You have to just respect that fact. Does that make sense? Does that weird?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just want to be clear that when I'm saying, like, do some research beforehand so you have material to draw from, I don't necessarily mean get yourself all hyped up and like, yeah, I'm going to draw the best picture ever. You know, it's not like that. I mean, maybe in some cases you need that in order to start. But for me, it's like, you know, I just spend some time looking and trying to absorb the information in front of me. And then I have like rich soil to draw from when I begin. So it's not like I'm hyping myself up. I'm like, you know, talking to myself in the mirror like, yeah, you can do this. It's like, you know,
That's what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Well, and I think, you know, for some things, that's what you should do. Like, that's the thing that should happen. But I just wanted to be clear that that's not necessarily what I'm saying.
Well, and what I'll say is that I think trying to push your brain in the right direction of what I just said, like the confidence, the interpreting the things that you're feeling in a very positive way versus a negative one is, I mean, it can make all the difference. That if it didn't, then win streaks and losing streaks wouldn't happen like that. I think it is that kind of phenomenon of the interpretation of what you're experiencing. So maybe it's not quite the same thing you're saying, but I think is related, at least in the sense that you should be inspired and feeling like you should be absorbing things that are exciting to you and make you feel energized and positive about whatever it is you're about to do. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Sorry we were gone for a while. Remember, you can leave us comments, send us emails. You can join our Discord. Remember, it is this month, the challenge is to journal every day in sort of a reflective sense. Like, think about the experiences that you've had, the things that happened, and then write them down, recall them in your memory, think about memory, and read Dracula. I have been reading Dracula. I was up very late last night reading it because I got very sucked in. And no spoilers, but I
get it sucked in.
Yeah. And I got to a part that was like, it was hard to go to bed, put it that way. Like, for such an old book, man, it's pretty good.
I'm loving it. Yeah.
I am too.
Dracula's great.
It got me. I was kind of scared. All right. So read Dracula. We'll see you next week.